So, a bunch of Mortal Kombat 1 bios have just been released for the characters that we know are on the base roster so far. And so I thought it could be interesting to quickly go through those bios and see what we can glean about this news timeline from that. First, we have Liu Kang's, which addresses that yes, he won control of the Hourglass, definitively confirming that yes, this is a continuation of MK11. Ed Boon did just say that in a weird way. Liu Kang wants everyone to have an opportunity to find peace, but there's an enemy that he could never have anticipated, which suggests to me that this is not a returning boss. This is not Shinnok, not Onaga, Blaze, the return of Kronika. The only potential returning boss is Shang Tsung, just because why would he anticipate Shang Tsung from a tangent timeline where he won showing up? So that's a possibility, but it's also quite likely that it's just an entirely new threat, or just a character that you wouldn't expect to be the boss. Like, you wouldn't expect Kano to be the main antagonist of Snowblind, would you? But there he was. So it could be something similar to that. Some character you wouldn't expect has risen up to be the new threat. So that is one of the possibilities. Then we have Sub-Zero, which confirms that he is the Grandmaster of the Lin Kuei, Bihan, and it discusses how his father had that role, his father who is referenced in some of his Round End lines, where he says, "Die like my father," and Scorpion's bio confirms that the two are brothers. Doesn't specify who Scorpion is though. It mentions how his father, the previous Grandmaster, died, but Sub-Zero took over, and it says Earthrealm hasn't been threatened in generations, which means that there is no ongoing Mortal Kombat tournament currently. We may be leading into a tournament against whatever the new threat is, but as of right now, there's no ongoing threat. Is something new has arisen. And the discussion of how Sub-Zero is leading the clan in a not so great direction and Scorpion isn't so sure about it, that implies that this is going to be where Scorpion splits off to form the Shiraidu as Takeda, the original Takeda, not Takeda Takahashi, did in the original timelines. But for now, Scorpion is still Lin Kuei. But I imagine we'll see the Shiraidu by the end of the story. I mean, it's also possible Scorpion will just kill Sub-Zero and take over as Grandmaster himself. But I feel like it's probably more likely that he's just going to form his own faction and we're going to get Lin Kuei as villains again. As repetitive as that is, Bihan as the Grandmaster of an evil Lin Kuei has potential for something new. We'll just have to wait and see. Next up is Kitana, Princess of Outworld. So it looks like that we might not be getting Edenia after all. It might just be that Edenia and Outworld are just one realm in this timeline. And for some reason, Liu Kang decided, yeah, it should be Outworld, not Edenia. We get confirmation that Mileena is the older sister. Why would the clone be reimagined as the older sister? I guess it must just be for the sake of whatever roles the two have gotten. Though this does clear up the oddity, which like, why is Mileena the one in charge? Well, she's the older sister. So it may be just for that plot point. So all I really get about Kitana is people want her to step up and replace Mileena. She doesn't want to. She'd rather Mileena just be the best empress she can be. And again, the word empress rather than queen. The implication there is that this society is going to be closer to Outworld rather than just the name Outworld. That this is full on Outworld, not Edenia, stylistically. And additionally, the word Empress implies an empire, which implies Outworld is still on its usual bullshit of merging realms, or at least conquering them. Otherwise, why would it not just be Queen? Now, it could be a case of, you know, the devs just using weird language, or even just the people making the bios getting stuff wrong. That does happen. But it looks like Mileena is actually just carrying on as Shao Kahn did, and Kitana's like, you know what, I want to protect Mileena. In fact, you know, the whole thing with the two being sisters could just be a new take on the idea of Kitana thinking Shao Kahn is her father. It could be in this timeline that that's not the case. She could still be a clone and that Kitana just doesn't know. Who knows? Johnny Cage, 21st Century Hero. First off, we see that he has a t-shirt as one of his outfits. That reminds me of Shiro Emiya of all things. He's still got the hand wraps that we typically see of him in the NetherRealm timeline. But I do hope he's still going to get like a shirtless look, because I don't want him to just have like t-shirts and shirts and stuff. It says 21st Century Action Hero, which confirms that this timeline is going to take place in the 21st century, and that we're not going to, as Johnny once said, go back to the 90s. And it also mentions social media, so definitely going to get mention of Johnny Cage's Twitter or MK Universe equivalent. Maybe they'll bring back the friendships thing from Cassie's MKX fatality. Or maybe instead, we're going to get reference to Johnny having a podcast. I mean, he says right now his star is fading, trying to remain relevant. So yeah, my hope in my last video that maybe Johnny is a successful movie star. He had success, certainly, but he seems to be losing it, which is still better than what we got in the last few timelines. Hopefully there will be at least one character in the roster who's like, yeah, I like Johnny Cage's movies. Quite good. Kenshi, restorer of his family's name. Now, this is one of the ones I'm most interested in seeing. Now, I've seen people suggest that because Kenshi talks about the Black Dragon, maybe he's not Yakuza and he's just Yakuza style. No, this confirms that his family joined the Bakuto, the predecessor to the Yakuza. So he does come from a Yakuza lineage from 5 centuries ago, after his clan was decimated as samurai. So I wonder, could they be the equivalent of the old Shiraidu? They could have been decimated by the Lin Kuei, because it doesn't specify that it was against another Japanese force. It could be that they were the ancient rivals rivals of the Lin Kuei, which would set up a dynamic between Kenshi and Scorpion and Sub-Zero. Because he had dynamics with those two in prior timelines. He was allies with Sub-Zero in the original, and then he left his son in Scorpion's care in the second. So the idea of him being rivals to those two here has potential. And then there's no mention of the Black Dragon here. I guess it's just a case of the Black Dragon trying to work with the Yakuza, while the Yakuza is what Kenshi is currently a part of. Then we have Kung Lao. His village has been given a name, that's cool. And again, this ties into the idea that there's no currently ongoing threat, the fact that he was just basically a farmer, not trained as a warrior his entire life. And then Liu Kang shows up and says, yeah, we need champions to defend Earthrealm. And so he's like, yeah, I'll do that. So it really is kind of like approximately his MK9 characterization, where he wants the glory but doesn't seem like desperate for it in a way. I mean, maybe he will be in the actual game. But hopefully that's the kind of balance of the various personas Kung Lao has had over the years that they'll go for. The hat looks a little too high up on his head. I feel like it should be a bit lower. It just doesn't quite look right. Maybe it's just the angle. I don't know. It just looks weird. Mileena, heir to Outworld's throne. Now, doesn't that imply that she's not on the throne yet? Mileena is the rightful heir to Outworld's throne. Which, considering we've seen Mileena or maybe Sindel in the background, could suggest that Sindel might be around, and so Mileena is just set to inherit the throne and hasn't actually taken on the throne yet. The Tarkat disease. So the question remains now is that just a disease that turns you into a Tarkatan, which is an already existing race? Like perhaps they can infect people like vampires now? Or is it that Tarkatans only exist through this curse, and that the whole race is just a disease now? Which would mean Baraka is someone who got infected. I'm not too sure about this. The implication is kind of fucked up. The idea that, yeah, that Baraka's like, we Tarkatans will join you in facing Kronika. And then Liu Kang's like, yeah, Tarkatans, fuck you. You're getting wiped from reality. But then somehow they're able to persevere by becoming a disease instead. I mean, that's ethnic cleansing, Liu Kang. You can't do that. Then Champion of Earthrealm, Raiden, which does firmly suggest that Raiden is going to be the equivalent of Liu Kang in this timeline, which is a shame. I really feel like just swapping the two roles is kind of lame. I like the idea of Liu Kang mentoring a younger Raiden, but I feel like someone else should have been given the shot to be the champion. Maybe Kung Lao. You know, you set up Liu Kang and the Great Kung Lao, which evidently is not going to amount to much, if anything, in this game, right? As per usual, NetherRealm will set things up without really thinking that far ahead. And you get to this game, and instead of having at least Kung Lao's descendant fulfill the role that was promised of his ancestor, now Raiden. The same village is listed for Raiden as it was for Kung Lao, suggesting that the two are raised together in the same village. But here we have a contrast between Raiden and Kung Lao, where Kung Lao was offered a chance to do something bigger, and he's like, yes, I'll do that. Whereas Raiden was just happy and content to tend the fields. And, you know, we saw the fields in the initial trailer, and so here we get in the contrast of Raiden doesn't want that. Raiden is almost like MK2 Kung Lao. He's hesitant, but he knows he must because Earthrealm needs the best fighters. And that's all we can glean from these bios currently. There's some interesting little tidbits here. I think the most interesting development is probably the Outworld and Edenia stuff. Our hopes of Edenia being explored seem to have been dashed. Apparently it's also been confirmed that the Edenia stage is actually, no, it's actually an Outworld stage. And it's just that Liu Kang has basically turned Outworld into Edenia, rather than letting Edenia just be its own thing again. Yeah, and then we have the setup for, you know, the Shiryu to make a return. And Bihan is still going to be the evil Sub-Zero, and the Lin Kuei is still going to turn evil. And Johnny is still largely the same as he was in the prior timeline. And Raiden has effectively just become what Liu Kang used to be, to an extent. These bios are making me think that NetherRealm still is doing the same thing they've always done, and not really letting things be different. Everything has to still eventually go back to the way it was. And maybe that'll be part of the story this time, as some of us theorized last time, that maybe the idea is that time is trying to correct itself and take things back to a more traditional style, which could be an interesting storyline. It's just that is a waste of this opportunity where they make it a huge deal, even more so than they did with MK9, out of the fact that this is a new era, a fresh take. Things are going to be different, characters have been completely reimagined, and yet a lot of it seems like it's going to just lead into the same old stuff we always get, which is a real shame. And, you know, some people said in the comments on my last video that you're making the mistake, you're giving NetherRealm the benefit of the doubt, and that always backfires. Looks like those people may have been right. You know, you try being positive and it just doesn't work out, and then people complain when you're not positive. Fuck this, fuck you, fuck all of it.